Legend Total War here, and today we're doing another tier list using Tier Maker, this time covering every playable legendary lord in Total War Warhammer 3, including Bellacor. But before we get started on that, I do need to let you guys know that this video here is sponsored by Manscaped. So I've been using Manscaped products for a while now, and this isn't the first promo we've done with them, but they've got a new lineup of men's products called the Manscaped Ultra Premium Collection. Now, Manscaped isn't just about shaving your balls, it's also about just general hygiene. So whether you're a Cinch, Khorne, or Slaanesh follower, it's definitely good for you to keep away that disgusting Nurgle corruption. And Manscaped can really help you do that by keeping yourself squeaky clean really easily. Because quite frankly, I want to spend the minimum amount of time actually cleaning myself because I just don't find it very fun. So using Manscaped is actually quite useful for that. I actually use the lawnmower to shave my face. People have been calling me a dickhead for a while now. I guess it just fits, but it just turns out that that razor, it was better than the regular razor that I was doing. I could shave my entire beard, even if it was big and bushy, really quickly. I was able to go from looking like this to looking like this. So within the Manscaped Ultra Premium Collection, you get the Manscaped 2-in-1 shampoo plus conditioner, the body wash with refined cologne scent, the hydrating body spray, the aluminium-free stick deodorant, or aluminum-free if you're from America, plus the moisturizing lip balm. So if any of those products interest you, check out the link in the description and in the pinned comment, and you can get 20% off Manscaped products, plus free international shipping. Big thanks to Manscaped for sponsoring this video. So talking about the tier list now, it's really important that we establish the criteria. It's the same criteria that I always give to my tier list for Legendary Lords, but there are 3 specific criteria that needs to be fulfilled in order to get an S tier ranking. So basically think of it like this. If you get high points in all 3 marks, that's S tier. If you get 2 out of 3 high scores, then you either end up in A or B tier. If you've got like 1 or even none high scores, then you end up in C and D tier. So the 3 criteria are this. The first thing, and this is the easiest thing to get high scores on, is how good they are personally on the battlefield. Whether they're a good melee combatant, whether they're a good spellcaster, whether they've got good abilities on the battlefield, their ability to tank, their usefulness personally on the battlefield. That's the first criteria. The second thing is how good they are at boosting their army. So whether that be reducing upkeep cost, increasing replenishment rates, increasing their stats, whatever it might be, having a better, more functioning army because of that legendary lord is where those points are going to go to. And the third criteria, and this is the thing that is definitely hit and miss with most legendary lords, is faction-wide bonuses. Really, I'm of the opinion that every single legendary lord in the game should have at least 1 global bonus to something. But there are some legendary lords that just don't have any, and those legendary lords are immediately disqualified from S tier. The ones that are going to end up in S tier have the highest global bonuses. So those are things like extra public order, reduced upkeep cost faction-wide, providing some kind of faction-wide bonus that's actually useful. Providing a faction-wide bonus that's not very useful at all won't provide much points. So obviously it depends on the usefulness of it. Anyway, let's get started now with the Kislev Legendary Lord, starting with Katarina. So I'm going to put Katarina as an A-tier Legendary Lord. Katarina is really sort of like the benchmark of like how a Legendary Lord should be built to not make them OP. Where she is very useful on the battlefield, because she's a decent melee combatant, because she's got a lot of ward saves through her equipment, and she's able to ride a warbear. She's an okay spellcaster. She's the best ice caster, but ice magic I don't rate that highly. However, with Katarina, because you couple her with a if you want to use her effectively, with an Ice Guard Doom stack, Ice Guards complement the Ice Sheet spell, Ice Sheet spell really well, because those 2 ability stacks, you're able to make an absolute quagmire for approaching units, making them take forever to get to you, which is really useful for an archer-based army. So it complements her army really well. In terms of her abilities to command her army, she's pretty much getting maxed out points. She reduces upkeep cost by 50% to Ice Guard, which are excellent units. She's able to provide ward save 8% to all units in her army, so that way if you don't want to go with Ice Guard spam, or even just any Ice Guard, any unit in her army is going to have 8% extra ward save. She's actually very useful if you start as Kastalton and confederate Katarina, and then make a Patriarch Doomstack with her, because Kastalton's faction bonus, like if you start as him, provides 20% ward save for all Patriarchs that are attached, and she provides an additional 8%, so you've got a base of 28% already without any equipment on the Patriarch. So her Patriarch Doomstack is better than Kastalton's. Anyway, we'll get to that in a bit. Now, in terms of global bonuses, she doesn't actually provide that much. When you start your campaign as her, as in if you choose her to begin with, it provides, like the Ice Court bonuses are really good. +6 global bonus to public order is really useful. But that's not attached to Katarina, it's attached to her faction. So if you're playing as Boris or Kastalton and you confederate her, you don't get to keep that. And when judging these legendary lords, we judge the stuff that is specifically bound to them, not necessarily as your starting legendary lords. That's the faction bonuses. Anyway, in terms of global bonuses that she does have, she's able to increase public order by 1 by her equipment. Sort of her global bonuses are the area that prevents her from getting to STS. She does provide a little bit, but just not particularly high score. Next up is Kastalton. Kastalton is a B tier legendary lord. I'm sure a lot of people expected me to put him a bit lower than that, but upon reviewing him, he does have some things going for him. He's an okay melee combatant, better than Katarina at melee, but he doesn't have spell casting. He does have the battle prayers, which is quite useful, where, you know, +40 melee attack in a pretty large zone of control is very useful. Plus he's able to provide heal, and he's able to reduce the fatigue. Now, these are abilities that aren't necessarily unique to him, because all Patriarchs can do it, but they can only pick one out of those 3, where he can get all 3. That's really his main benefit as being a Lord Patriarch, which is a little bit on the weak side. His ability to command an army is not very good. He doesn't provide any bonuses to any type of army. So he gets essentially the minimal score as a commander. He's just not a good commander at all. And in terms of global bonuses, he does provide one that's actually quite useful, especially for Kislev, which at rank 20, he's able to increase the amount of income that you make from all buildings by 10%, at the cost of a building increasing in cost by 300%. But yeah, I don't know, I think it's worth it to increase your overall revenue by 10%. So that ability there is stopping him from becoming C or even D tier, because that is quite useful in the late campaign. Because I don't find that building particularly useful anyway. So yeah, Kastalton B tier. Boris, he is A tier. So he is an amazing melee combatant, way better than Kastalton. He doesn't particularly have any great abilities, so he's just a really good fighter. He's able to duel just about any monstrous unit really quickly, and he's very tanky. In terms of commanding abilities, he's getting essentially max points out of this, because he's able to reduce the upkeep costs and increase the strength of Warbear Riders, which is arguably the strongest unit in the Kislev roster. Giving him a Warbear Doomstack, I reckon, is the strongest army that you can make as Kislev. Now, he is able to also give regeneration to Elemental Bears, but I tried out Elemental Bears, and I just think they're super derpy, and so I would way prefer the better utility of the Warbear Riders, which they're able to win in siege battles, in blobs, they're especially good in field battles. They're good against infantry, good against armored units, good against demons. They're just good against pretty much everything, and Boris just makes them super useful. In terms of global bonuses, he doesn't do a ton, but he probably does more than the other two, to be honest. He's able to reduce your resettlement cost of ruins down to 0%, so it's completely free once you've got that ability with Boris, which is pretty useful because there's going to be ruins quite often, and being able to recolonize them for free will save you, $1 grand here and there, so that's quite useful. And the other thing he does is reduce the cost of the Motherland invocations by 10%, which, if there's a event that pops up fairly regularly called the Motherland that reduces it by 50%, you're essentially only paying 40% for that. So it's quite useful if you can make those happen at the same time. So those are the Kislev Legendary Lords. Moving on to Cathay. With Xiaoming first, he is an A-tier Legendary Lord. Now, Xiaoming is an amazing melee combatant, arguably one of the best in the game. It's possible to make him a super good one-man Doomstack because of the various Cathay equipment and abilities. He's also a pretty decent spellcaster. In terms of his ability to command, he's a really good commander because he gives a big boost to any melee units in his army because he is yang focused, I think, which is the melee side of the Cathay Harmony. So yeah, essentially maxed out points for commandment abilities and on the battlefield. But in terms of global bonuses, he actually doesn't provide anything. And that's actually the same thing with Miao Ying. These two are very similar in terms of how they're being graded, almost identical. It's basically a amazing melee combatant and good spellcaster, and amazing commander, but neither of them provide any global bonuses, which disqualifies them from getting into S tier. But yeah, both of them are arguably some of the best one-man doom stacks, or one-woman doom stacks, that you can make in the game. But without global bonuses, you're disqualified from being able to enter the illustrious S tier. But both of them are amazing legendary lords. Okay, moving on, we got Greasus Goldtooth. Greasus is also an A tier legendary lord, because the funny thing with Greasus is that he's actually not that good on the battlefield. His benefits are he's a decent commander and he provides some good global bonuses. Now the reason he's not great on the battlefield is because he's slow. He just doesn't keep up with the rest of his army. Because his army, if you want to make use of his various abilities, is Iron Guts. That's what you want to give for him. Reducing the upkeep cost of Iron Guts by 50% is very useful. He can't keep up with them, so Iron Guts are best used just rushing at the enemy, and oftentimes they will win the battle before Greasus arrives at the battlefield. He's just too fat and slow. So even though he's got amazing stats, you just don't really make use of it, because if the enemy has artillery or missile units, you just don't want to be waiting for this fat sack of shit to arrive so that he can duel some lord. In terms of his commanding ability, really good, and the global bonuses his provider also really good, because he provides bonuses to camps. Being able to provide 5 extra growth per turn to camps is really good, because camps are just super useful, especially if they end up getting destroyed every now and again. Just rebuilding them very quickly is quite good with Greasus. And he's able to increase your capacity of camps by 1. So very useful there. Next up is Scrag. Scrag is also an A tier legendary lord. Believe it or not, most of these legendary lords I think are, it's a little bit unbalanced, but all of them are A tier. It's just not an even spread of it. So Scrag is better than Greasus on the battlefield, because he's faster than Greasus, despite like lugging this huge pot around with him. He's quite quick, and he's a okay spellcaster. I don't think Lore of the Great Maw is particularly good. Some people swear by it, but I just haven't seen it. But having some magic is definitely better than nothing. So I'd say he's better than Greasus in terms of commanding, in terms of actually fighting on the battlefield. And he does have good melee stats as well. In terms of commanding abilities, he's really good. He provides a better doom stack than what Greasus can make in the Gorges. Gorges are way better than Iron Guts, in my opinion. And he's able to reduce their upkeep cost by a fair bit, by 50%. And then in terms of global bonuses, this is the main thing where Scrag is prevented from entering S tier. He doesn't provide any global bonuses whatsoever. So if he did, he would have actually reached S tier, because he hit high points in the other 2 categories. Whereas Greasus hit low points in the personal combatant category. Alright, so that's all like the mortal faction. Now we're moving on to demons. So we've got Kyros Fateweaver, who is a D-ranked legendary lord. I'm just kidding, he's S-ranked, because he has got it all. Kyros Fateweaver is a one-man doomstack, because even very early on in the campaign, because of his spellcasting ability and barrier, he's got ridiculous amounts of barrier, ridiculous spellcasting abilities. He's able to destroy entire armies so easily. Even without using the unlimited magic exploit, you can oftentimes destroy an entire city quickly, just because he's so good at it. He's a flying legendary lord, and he's not great in melee, but his magic more than makes up for it, and his abilities are incredibly good. In terms of commanding, he is also like an amazing commander, because he is able to boost any Tsinchian unit on the battlefield, because he increases barrier by I think up to 60% and reduces the delay to which barrier regenerates, which is also really useful if you want to cycle out damaged units. That way you keep them nice and healthy. So Kyros's units, Kyros's army in general, doesn't matter what unit you build in there, they're all going to benefit from Kyros as the commander. And then in terms of global bonuses, he just provides more than anybody else in the game, right? He provides a +3 global bonus to public order. He reduces the time time delay of the changing of the ways, which is super broken overpowered because, you know, Halt Faction as just one of the changing of the ways, doing that once every 10 turns is super powerful. But with Kyros doing it once every 7 turns, that's just such an incredible boost in power. He's also able to reduce the cost in Grimoires by 9% of the changing of the ways, and I think he makes one of the changing of the ways completely free, but that particular one isn't really that useful. It's like faction intent or something. It's not that big of a deal. But yeah, his global bonuses are just absolutely absurd, which is why he's entering the S tier. Next up, we have Kugat Plaguefather, and Kugat is under the A tier because even though Nurgle itself is a kind of a weak faction, Kugat is a good lord within that, and he's able to provide a lot of bonuses that really help Nurgle out quite a bit. Without Kugat, Nurgle would really struggle. So, this is what he does. In terms of on the battlefield, he's essentially getting the maximum score because he is just a multi-purpose, one-man everything army. His biggest weakness is his size and his speed, but he's got arguably the highest hit point pool out of anyone in the game, so he's just super tanky regardless of what's being thrown at him. He's a good melee combatant. He's an artillery piece. He's a Mortis engine, and a Mortis engine means if he goes into melee, he dishes out damage all around him. This is, of course, not at him at rank 1, but when he's like maxed out. He's a spellcaster. So, if anything, Kugat actually has way too many abilities. You have to decide which way to specialize him. Now, in terms of his commanding ability, this is probably where it's going to let him down a fair bit, because while you definitely can do the entire campaign with just Nurglings, that's his primary unit that he boosts, and Nurglings are like the lowest tier unit that Nurgle can produce. They're not bad, but it's your lowest tier unit. So his maxed out Doomstack is not really that special. But yeah, he's able to provide a lot of extra replenishment, regeneration around Nurglings, which is quite good. But it's just, it would be good if he was able to boost Soul Grinders, although it kind of makes sense that nobody should be able to do that, except for Bellacor should be able to. But anyway, we'll get to him later. In terms of global bonuses, he provides some good stuff. He's able to reduce the upkeep cost of Great Unclean Ones by 15%. He's able to reduce the recruitment cost of all of the Nurglings by what, 45% or something ridiculous. It's by a lot, making them almost free. That's really useful. But yeah, it's lots of little bonuses in there, nothing too noteworthy, which is one of the things that's stopping him from getting S tier. So he's got really high marks in the battle capabilities, but sort of medium marks in both global bonuses and in commanding abilities, which is putting him under A tier there. Next up is Scarbrand. Scarbrand is S tier. So this is a bit of a weird one with Scarbrand, because the criteria is a little bit distorted because of just how sort of busted his mechanics are and just where these busted mechanics are going to be classified under. So in terms of a battle combatant, obviously he's going to be one of the best in the game. He's essentially the best fighter in the game. Despite the fact he's very big, he could duel essentially anyone. Him at max strength is just so powerful. I think he's the only legendary lord in the game that's capable of getting over 3,000 weapon strength. He's got amazing melee capabilities. His animations are really good. He's able to actually... One of the great things about Scarbrand is that he's one of the few large characters that when they do an attack, their attack damage code is activated before the knockdown. With a lot of legendary lords, especially like Kyros, Kyros does the knockdown before the damage, so he ends up knocking people down a lot but not actually damaging them. Whereas Scarbrand, when he does his kick or he throws his weapons down, the damage output is done first, and then like 1 or 2 seconds later, and that's when the knockdown happens, which is really good for Scarbrand because he's basically prevented from a bug that affects so many large units. And it's one of the primary things that makes cavalry terrible. It's because they knock down before they dish out damage. In terms of his battle capabilities, he doesn't really boost his army at all, right? Doesn't provide any stat bonuses or reduce upkeep costs. So why would he get S tier in this regard? Surely he gets dropped down. Well, here's the thing. With Scarbrand, he is able, after every victory, to regain movement points, meaning that he is able to keep fighting more battles than anyone else. And considering that affects his army the most, I kind of classified that under that category. So him being able to restore his movement constantly is what's giving him his good command ability. And in terms of global bonuses, he doesn't provide much, but what he does provide is really good. Anytime anybody creates a blood host, which is one of the most overpowered abilities in the game, thanks to Scarbrand, 3 additional units will be placed in that blood host. So that makes your blood hosts even bloody stronger, even if it wasn't Scarbrand that created them. So I'm going to give him maxed out points, essentially just for that. But if you want to compare which Legendary Lord is actually better, whether it be Kyros or Scarbrand, I'd have to say Kyros is a better tier of S tier, but both of them meet the qualifications for hitting S tier. They both got really high. I would say that Kyros is easily a 10 out of 10 Legendary Lord, where Scarbrand is probably more along the lines of 9.5. Enough to get S tier, but, you know, it's 9.5 is not A tier. This is like the high 8s, low 9s, and then this is like, I don't know, 8, low 8 to high 7s, and then it just goes down to like 4 over here. I usually don't rate anyone 1, 2, or 3, just in case anyone ever shows up that actually has a terrible, really terrible score, like is not good on any category, which currently there is no Legendary Lord that does that, but there's room for it if they do introduce, like if they introduced a halfling Legendary Lord that, just as an example, that was terrible on the battlefield, provided no global bonuses, and was also like an incompetent commander, then that's what the true 0 out of 10 is there for. But anyway, we haven't met that character yet. Not that that's coming, but it doesn't exist yet. Anyway, moving on to Nakari. I'm going to put Nakari... This one's difficult because I want to put him at B tier. I can't put him in A tier or S tier. But he borderline C tier. So I'm going to put him under B tier. Because what he does do well, and it's only one thing, he does do it really well. So Nakari is super fast and he's an amazing melee combatant on comparison with Scarbrand. Scarbrand maybe being slightly better, but at least Nakari is faster. You can win entire siege battles just by rushing Nakari and bowling everyone over and just capping the point really quickly at the edge of the map. He's really good at doing that. Does he boost his army at all? Not really, but he does seduce units. So this is where I sort of justified Scarbrand getting maxed out points for being able to get his campaign movement range back, because Nakari does a similar thing. I just don't think what Nakari does is as useful. So what Nakari does is reduce the cost of seducing, and he's able to increase his budget by a fair bit. Now, that's good, so he's definitely getting points for that, but I don't rate it as highly as getting, you know, 50% of your movement back. Getting able to chain like 10 victories in a single turn, just like Taurox, is what makes Scarbrand just super, super strong. And Nakari can't do that with seducing. And you do have to pay for the actual units that you seduce. So that's good, but just not worthy of A tier. And in terms of global bonuses, Nakari provides nothing. So that's why he's entering the B tier with... the homeless man over here. Next up is the Demon Prince. Where are we putting the Demon Prince? Is it going to be D tier? Is it going to be C tier? Guess what? It's C tier. So, this one's a difficult one to rate because there are a lot of things associated with the Demon Prince that we need to take into consideration. Because the Demon Prince doesn't have a tech tree, but he does have like his tech tree is the favor, and the favor is tied to, or glory I should say, is tied to his equipment, and his equipment is tied to his global bonuses. His skill tree sucks, right? So let's just break it down to one thing at a time. His battle capabilities are awful. He's not a good melee. Like, he's able to dish out good damage, but his base stats are terrible, and even if you give him like Corrin equipment, he's still like no better than... Like he's actually like a bad bloodthirster, which is not good considering you like maxed out Corn devotion. If you max him out with Cinch, you know, you can get some barrier, but he's never going to be as good as a spellcaster as just a regular iridescent horror. So he's not a good spellcaster because he can't get multiple points into a spell so that he can get it cheaper. So if you're going to use magic as the Demon Prince, you need to have attached heroes. Don't use it with him. And even his maxed out equipment just doesn't make him a good fighter. Now, in terms of commanding, he's actually getting maxed out points for that, because assuming you go down any speciality, right, and this is where we're going to give him those points through the glory, he's able to reduce the upkeep cost of his personal army by a ridiculous amount. So it's essentially possible giving him any type of an undivided army. So you know, you can have a full Bloodthirster army, a full Plague, Great Unclean One army, full Keeper of Seeker army, full Soul Grinder or Lord of Change army, and it can be essentially free of upkeep, giving him an equipment set. So that's where he's getting maxed out points for that. But that's only 1 point. In terms of global bonuses, we could give those points to him if we classified the glory as his global bonuses, but that I'm classifying as his tech tree, so that's his faction that's doing it. So I'm going to put him under C tier there. He's just, I think generally speaking, the Demon Prince is very hard to rate because of his stuff being all over the place and hard to classify what goes where. But when you play him, most people will agree that he's one of the most disappointing legendary lords in the game. He just doesn't really have that sort of oomph that the other demons have. And even the mortals, just they kind of do more, even if they're not as good of a melee fighter. He's an absolute pincushion. He's too weak in too many areas. He just can't possibly go above B tier, above C tier. But nor does he qualify as D tier. Now, Bellacor. Bellacor is D tier. Bellacor sucks, right? Now, it's possible to make Bellacor a one-man Doomstack if you play as Cathay, right? But here's the thing with Bellacor. Obviously, you can't start your campaigns as Bellacor, but you play through the campaign and win the soul race, and you get Bellacor. Bellacor has currently no trait. He has no red line skill, so he isn't able to boost his army at all, and he has no global bonuses. So he is only a good fighter, and in the other categories, he's actually getting negative points. He's getting negative points in the commander ability, because even a generic lord has better ability to boost their army than Bellacor. So he's getting the lowest possible score out of that. He's an absolute 0, right? And I very rarely give an absolute 0. And then he just provides no global bonuses whatsoever. So he is only a good fighter. Now, Bellacor would have been great in his current setup as a legendary hero. Another thing to keep in mind is that he costs upkeep cost, and he increased your supply lines. So, unlike Gotrek, as an example, Gotrek, even though he is only a good fighter, really, Gotrek doesn't... And this is, of course, in Warhammer 2. Gotrek isn't introduced into Warhammer 3 yet. Gotrek doesn't have any upkeep costs. He's completely free of upkeep costs, and he doesn't increase your supply lines. That's something that Bellacor causes problems for you. So if you win the campaign and you get this one, let's say you're playing as Khorne. It doesn't make any sense to have Bellacor. And disbanding him, you suffer from the supply line bug, which they're going to fix fairly soon. But generally speaking, he's definitely the most disappointing legendary lord in the game. He just doesn't provide any serious value whatsoever. Anyway, that's the legendary lord tier list there. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you learned something from it. Don't forget to check out Manscaped in the link below. Again, special thanks to them for sponsoring this video. Appreciate you guys, and we'll see you next time, fuckers. Bye.